Now, somebody told me there was an interview this week that a couple had done with somebody called Oprah Winfrey, was it? Heard about it?
Yeah, along with the other 12 million people in the UK that tuned in to watch the interview, yep.
Has anybody not heard about it? Well, I mean, we did talk last week about whether or not this was going to be a big interview or not. We have the answer. It was ginormously, extrovertly, massively big. Agreed?
Totally agreed. I think we thought it would be big, as you say, but I mean, it was jaw-dropping and explosive.
Yeah.
There was just revelation after revelation after revelation, and we sat up and watched it, didn't we, through the night on Sunday and Monday, and we just kept looking at each other, absolutely floored by some of the things that were being said.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, to fill you in, dear viewer and dear listener, however you're consuming this podcast, as I say every week, on YouTube or on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we were literally there like that all night, through the 2 hours of the night, thinking, oh, that's quite big. Oh, that's really big. And by the end of it, as I've said a few times on air recently, I'd sort of sat paralyzed in my chair thinking, right, where do we begin? Where do you begin to decipher that one? But I think it was pretty clear that what came out of it in the end were, two key and very important points about Meghan's mental health, about allegations of racism. And those are the sort of two big issues, I think, that have dominated the fallout from this and done perhaps the most damage to the royal family, particularly if you're in another country, if you're abroad looking in.
Yeah, we wondered, didn't we, whether they would talk about the institution of the monarchy, or whether they would talk personally about the family and members within that institution.
Yeah. And they did both.
And they tackled both, and they tackled both head on.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't hold back, and all congratulations to Oprah Winfrey for landing such a phenomenal interview and for doing it so well. I mean, there are some people that say that she should have asked more questions or different questions or pushed them on things or challenged them a bit more. But actually, given what she got out of this couple, then, full congratulations to her.
I think she was brilliant and gave them the space to talk and to say what they wanted. But it was quite clear that Harry and Meghan were at a place where they were ready to talk and to sort of offload how they were feeling, and they came ready to say this stuff, and Oprah gave them the space to deliver it.
We don't, I mean, like Oprah said, didn't she? Let's tell everybody that there is no subject off limit. But what we can't say, and I'm not saying this did happen, but we cannot rule out the fact that Meghan and Oprah would have had some private conversations. Don't forget they're friends and neighbours in Santa Barbara in California, and they might well have just decided to say, let's not go there, or let's not do that. But nevertheless, as you say, Oprah got a lot out of them. So we have decided.
And there's 2 hours still on the cutting room floor that we haven't.
Oh yes. That's the other thing she said. There were 2 hours that we watched, and there's another 2 hours that you didn't actually see. Blimey, I mean, that was a long conversation. We've dispensed with the Robinson's Royal Rota this week because it would basically just have one item, Lizzie, which would be
Harry and Meghan
interview.
The interview and the subsequent aftermath. Really.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it kind of answers that question about why do we always talk about Harry and Meghan when they, we're royal. I'm a royal correspondent. You're a royal producer. Why do we talk about Harry and Meghan? What's it got to do with the royals anymore? Well, now we know.
Now we know. Yeah, I mean, they are, as the Queen says herself, much loved members of the family, always will be. Harry is the great grandson of the monarch. He remains a member of the family, but the stuff that they have said have direct implications for the royal family.
Direct implications for the royal family, direct implications for Britain as a country and how we are seen abroad, direct implications for relations between different ethnicities in this country, direct consequences for how we deal with mental health. And direct consequences, I think, also for Harry's relationship with his father and his brother, which by all accounts is very fractured at the moment. But we'll bring you some news during the podcast about how Harry and William, the two brothers, might be starting to attempt, I wouldn't put it any more than that, starting to attempt to repair the big chasm that exists between them at the moment.
Yeah,
that would be fair.
I think
Right.
we've decided that the best way to tackle this is we're going to go through it topic by topic, aren't we? Through the interview, we've decided on what we think are the key issues, and we're going to take
takeouts. Yeah. Well, you want you go. So topic number one.
Topic number one, headline: Archie.
Right, Archie. What was said about his skin color, and what Meghan said about his titles and the security as well. So, have a listen.
In those months when I was pregnant, so we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title, and also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What? About how dark your baby is going to be?
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like.
Ooh.
That was relayed to me from Harry. Those were conversations that family had with him.
What was that conversation?
That conversation I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
Can you tell us what the question was?
No, I'm not comfortable sharing that.
So we had their Meghan talking about it. We had their Harry talking about it. They wouldn't say who it was in the royal family that made these allegedly racist remarks about Archie's skin tone. We don't know the context in which it was said. We do not know who said it. Okay, let's get all that out there. But
what we do know is that since the interview has aired, it has been made quite clear to us by people we've been speaking to, but also Oprah Winfrey herself has come out and said that they were not talking about the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh, but they have both said that they are not going to disclose who they were talking about because they feel it would be very damaging to that individual.
Yes, we have been told, as was Oprah, that this is not about the Queen and Prince Philip.
You asked Harry about it when he came out. He did not tell you who it was. Did you all have another conversation about it? Because that was something that there's a big guessing game all around the world. Who was it? Who was it? Who was it? And I thought it was very touching that Harry still is choosing to protect the identity of whoever that was.
Yes, and he did not share the identity with me, but he wanted to make sure that I knew, and if I had an opportunity to share it, that it was not his grandmother nor his grandfather that were a part of those conversations.
That it was not his grandmother and Prince Philip, you said?
Yeah,
was not
his grandfather. Neither his grandmother nor grandfather were a part of those conversations. He did not tell me who were a part of those conversations. Right. As you can see, I tried to get that answer on camera and off.
That was Oprah speaking after the event. So let's now talk about the actual words themselves. Meghan saying that there was a conversation had with Harry, by the way, not with her. It was relayed to her by Harry about the darkness of Archie's skin, the tone of Archie's skin. I don't know how to explain it. I think everyone feels reasonably uncomfortable generally saying it. And
so the words that Meghan said were that there were concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born. And as you say, she said that was relayed to her from Harry. Those were conversations that family had with him. And he then
and we should be clear, they were Meghan's words, so we don't know if they were exactly the words that were used by said unknown family member. Nevertheless, it sparked, and I think Meghan wanted this interview to spark a debate about race in the UK, because my understanding is that Meghan doesn't think that we in the UK talk about it enough. It is an issue. There is, 15 to 20% of the UK population is Black, Asian, and minority ethnic. Therefore, why isn't this a debate that we're having more often? And I think you will find a lot of people, people of colour, who have responded to this interview and said, I recognised a lot of what Meghan said. Meghan was speaking for me.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the conversation this has sparked in the last week because of this is much wider than the claims that Meghan made in the interview.
Which is what she wanted.
Yeah, it's become much more of a debate about society, and there have been so many people that, whatever television channel you turn on this week, newspaper you open, there's a conversation that's happening where people are saying, I can totally relate because I've had that happen to me.
Let's give you, I mean, it might be worth it. Rather than just focus on this very narrow issue of what was said about Archie's skin colour, and we don't know who said it or what context it was given or precisely what words were used. Let's have a flavour about some of the reactions that we've had this week from people about the issue that Meghan raised.
Everything that Meghan and Harry said really resonated with me. It resonated with me because they were describing my life. They were describing that tightrope that I have to walk every single day when I leave my house.
And I feel like we kind of saw this coming, and it's heartbreaking to see a woman, go through suicidal thoughts. And I think, again, what really hit me was when she said that she didn't want them to know that she was going through that. And I think we as Black women, we don't want them to see us break. I'm a big believer of those who understand racism exists. They may not look like us, but they know. It's those people defending Meghan who aren't Black, but they know that it does exist. But there's a whole subset of the UK community that just don't want to know, that don't want to believe it, that don't care.
So I was tearful yesterday when I watched Meghan, and yes, there was a hanging of the shoulders. But then, after thinking about that courageous step that they both took to air their story, I felt that was another step forward.
There is this general perception that the British don't show racism overtly. It's kind of like... So, but then they're not saying it, but they're implying it. It's implied racism, and it's just unfathomable. Yeah, it's not always about race, but it's playing a part.
So a flavour there of how, and I thought that was very interesting. How, for example, I went out for a walk the other day because actually we were being floored by this interview a little bit, haven't we? And it's been non-stop from Good Morning Britain, and that's a whole other story, but we'll get to that, all the way through to News at 11 we were on Monday after this interview aired on ITV. So having been a bit floored by it, I went out for an afternoon walk one day and actually stopped by a lady who said to me, look, I saw you on the telly the other day. I am Black, she said. I'm a woman. I recognise a lot of what Meghan said. She also told me I'm from Italy. And I even found that when I came to Britain, you guys don't talk about this stuff. You shove everything under the carpet and everyone's too closed. And this is an Italian saying that. So imagine an American woman of colour like Meghan coming over to the UK, and not just the UK, she went into the royal family. So you can kind of see how that disconnect happened.
Yeah, and it's no doubt, I mean, the last week, the comments that were said have been taken by Harry and Meghan in this way. And it has, there has been a lot of debate about the royal family, and this is a family that the Queen is head of the Commonwealth. Prince William has come out today and said, we as a family are not racist. He's addressed it head on, the first comments from the royal family. They will be absolutely devastated to hear these words from Harry and Meghan.
Absolutely. And actually, as you've mentioned it there, we were going to sort of maybe run it later chronologically, but let's just hear those words from William today.
And can you just let me know, is the royal family a racist family, sir?
No, we're very much not a racist family.
So that was a what we call a doorstep in the industry. It's when you throw a question at someone, usually a politician, in this case, a member of the royal family. And normally you get actually zero response or a sort of brush off. This was something that William clearly wanted to address. They were the first comments we've had from a member of the royal family about the whole thing. Prince Charles was asked the other day and decided not to answer them. I think he was taken by surprise. I don't know whether or not their comms teams, and this is just me guessing here, have told them this is a massive talking point in the country and therefore you might well get questions. I don't know. But at the very least, you would have thought they would have had a conversation that before you go on an event this week, this topic, this interview has been one of the main news stories this week, and those were William's responses to that question. Is your family racist? Now, Lizzie, when Meghan mentioned this stuff, it came up in a conversation that she had with Oprah about Archie's titles and security. And she was alleging, and I haven't seen this anywhere, but she was alleging that when Prince Charles becomes king, and Archie is therefore a grandchild of a monarch, he should normally automatically become a prince. But she was alleging that the royal family were actively trying to change it for him.
Yeah, she was asked by Oprah that they must have had some conversations and her own suspicions as to why they didn't want to make Archie a prince, and that's where these remarks about the colour of Archie's skin came from. That's what she made them off the back of that question. But she said that she thought that they didn't want to make Archie a prince, which Archie at the moment wasn't entitled to be a prince or princess. Only the firstborn of Prince William was entitled.
And actually, as you mentioned princess there, so I'll just jump in, and there will be, he will have a smaller sister now. That was one of the things they revealed in the course of the interview, that Archie's going to have a baby sister. So we're talking here about Archie being a prince and new baby sister being a princess.
But at the moment, when Archie was born, only Prince George was entitled to be a prince as the firstborn of Prince William. The Queen intervened for Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis so that they were all princes and princesses. Archie wasn't entitled to prince or princess, but he was.
Why didn't the Queen intervene for him? She could have done.
Well, Archie was entitled to take one of Prince Harry's subsidiary titles. So Harry is the Duke of Sussex. One of his subsidiary titles is the Earl of Dumbarton. Archie was entitled to take that title, but we were told at the time, no, he will be Master Archie. He is essentially a private citizen. So
now that was spun to be Harry and Meghan's wish, which we kind of thought it was, and kind of matched everything that they were saying at the time. But given what Meghan said about how the palace was actively spinning against them, or to use her words, they were lying. Well, to paraphrase her words, they were telling, what did she say, falsehoods? In other words, lying about us. I don't quite know who to believe here. Was it the palace saying that Harry and Meghan didn't want Archie to be a prince or princess, or did actually Meghan want him to be a prince?
Yeah, so as you say, when Prince Charles becomes king, then his grandchildren are all entitled to be princes,
right,
princesses. And she sort of, the point she, I think, was making was that would be removed, and they weren't going to do that. Now, we have never heard that before. So
well, then maybe there were conversations that were had, or maybe not. But basically, as the rule stands currently, and it hasn't been changed, and we haven't been told of a change, anyone who is a grandchild of the monarch, so therefore Archie and his sister, baby sister, will be grandchildren of the monarch when Prince Charles becomes king. You would have thought that they would automatically become prince or princesses. And actually, I thought if they were, I'll tell you this much, and this is just my thoughts, if they were thinking of changing it, they'd be bloody stupid to do it now, wouldn't they? Given everything that's been said. Right. We've got so much to get through. We can't spend too long on one subject, but go on.
Then there was the issue, you mentioned security.
Okay, do that quickly.
So she said, didn't she, that that they were told that Archie would have no security when he was born. Well, Harry and Meghan had security at the time as senior working members of the royal family, and therefore Archie would have been protected. They lost that security when they made the decision to step away.
Yeah, and actually, Harry was very aggrieved about that. I mean, I think there was a debate in the UK about, well, there were accusations in some newspapers. Why should we, as British taxpayers, pay for Harry if he's decided to leave the royal family? But I suppose the counter argument is, well, it wasn't his choice to be born into the royal family. And as Harry said, has my risk level changed because I've left and moved to America? The answer was no. So he thought that he should be entitled to security and now has to pay for it for himself. I have to say, if we're being blunt here, he can afford to pay for it himself. So I don't think it's an issue of the money. I just think he just didn't like the principle that it was being taken away from him. At the risk of sounding like a chairman of a debate where we have to move on, I am going to move on to topic number 2, because we've now done number 1. Topic number 2 is also very serious, which is...
This was when Meghan disclosed that things got so bad for Meghan that she said that she just didn't want to be alive anymore.
I knew that if I didn't say it, that I would do it. And I just didn't want to be alive anymore. And that was a very clear and real and frightening constant thought.
And not only did she say, well, I think it was quite a devastating and very moving part of the interview, that she had decided that, you know, she was contemplating ending her life because she was so unhappy and her mental health was so bad. Not only did she say that, she also said that when she sought help from the royal family for her mental health, she was told that none was forthcoming because she wasn't a paid employee. So therefore, you're not a cook or a footman or a secretary or an official. You are the wife of a senior member of the royal family. Therefore, our HR department can't help you. That, to me, seems very odd, how they can have HR policies which mean that senior members of the royal family don't get help. Is a topic for discussions, which we will have. But therefore, just have a listen to Meghan say how and when she went for help and what the response was.
And so I went to human resources and I said, I need help. They said, my heart goes out to you because I see how bad it is, but there's nothing we can do to protect you because you're not a paid employee of the institution.
Okay, so a lot to discuss in there as well, as there are with all these things. First of all, I think everyone's heart goes out to Meghan if she was so deeply unhappy that she was contemplating such terrible and drastic things.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was absolutely shocking to hear her say that. And I mean, we knew that they were unhappy. We knew that, you know, even before they left, we knew they were unhappy. We knew when our colleague Tom Bradby asked her in South Africa if she was okay, that you know, she clearly wasn't okay. But to hear that things were so bad for her that she felt that way is just awful.
Well, you know, I thought the whole point of the royal family, and particularly William and Kate's campaigning on this issue, is that they should end the stigma of mental health, and you should equally be able to go and talk about your broken arm as much as you are about a breakdown of your mental health. And to suggest that Meghan couldn't be seen seeking help for her mental health, I thought was also very damaging for the royal family, given everything that they say and campaign for. Yeah,
they've done a huge amount of work collectively on mental health. That brilliant
Heads Together campaign,
work, that they did. But even, you know, Harry has spoken publicly about his own mental health, and even he said that, you know, he wasn't quite sure what to do. He felt a bit ashamed about going to people for help. You know, this is a family that has worked really hard on this issue and trying to help,
and actually,
but they can't help themselves.
Even this week, William and Kate, we're not going to play the clip because there simply just isn't time, but there's some pictures here of William and Kate talking to a family. This is a service called Shout, where you can, it's a text-based service for people who've got issues with their mental health. They were talking to a family whose 12-year-old son was contemplating suicide, and it was quite a moving conversation. And this, you know, they are so heavily involved in this campaign, and yet we now have allegations from Meghan, and we should be clear here, this is Meghan's side of the story. We haven't heard the other side of the story, but allegations from Meghan that she couldn't get the help that she needed when her own mental health was deteriorating. There's a couple of issues there. One is that the royal family does have what's called the medical household. Now, that's the kind of bunch of doctors, very senior physicians that look after the royal family. Why couldn't she have gone to one of them? That's a question. We don't know the answer to that. For example, Prince Philip's doctor was the one who said you need to go to hospital to have your hearts. By the way, he's still there. We will get to that. Well, we might not. There's so much to discuss, but he's still in hospital and he's moved. But we discussed that last week, didn't we? Yes, we did. So I digress. We got the medical household, which they could have gone to, presumably. And also, if Harry said before that he's received help for his mental health, why couldn't he have just handed over the mobile telephone number of the mental health expert that he saw?
Yeah, there is that, but she says that there was, in her words, no help available to her. She also talked really sadly about the fact that there was an engagement that they had to go to. They did an engagement at the Royal Albert Hall, which we can actually play you pictures from. They were going to see Cirque du Soleil. And Harry said to her, you know, are you sure you are okay to come? And she basically said that it's not safe to leave me on my own because I don't know what I might do. So that they had to go, they went to that engagement together. And she said that when she looked at those photographs of them out on that night, you know, they had their sort of game faces on, were smiling, but actually behind it,
Well,
you know,
let's hear that bit,
ripping
actually. Yeah, let's hear that bit, because so we just showed you the pictures of the actual event. That was the engagement that happened, that cameras were invited to, that Meghan and Harry went to. Now hear Meghan's explanation of what happened that night, because it was the night after, or just hours after, she told Harry about her mental health crisis.
We had to go to this event, and I remember him saying, "I don't think you can go." And I said, "I can't be left alone."
Because you were afraid of what you might do to yourself?
If you zoom in, what I see is how tightly his knuckles are gripped around mine. You can see the whites of our knuckles because we are smiling and doing our job, but we're both just trying to hold on.
Now, why was she so deeply unhappy? Well, part of the reason she explained was just how she was just, you know, not getting any help, that she was kind of silent. She wasn't able to go out when she wanted to go out, that everyone was telling her that she was just simply, you know, out there too much, you need to hide away. And she said, I've been out twice in the last 4 months or something, wasn't it? I mean, and we said before in this podcast, it's not a surprise that she was lonely, given she had new life, new house, new country, new baby, new motherhood, new career, new family, whatever else. And her allegation is, and again, this is Meghan's story, it's not the other side, that she was lonely and didn't have any help. And what did Oprah ask her? You do a very good impression of it, Lizzie. Were you silent?
Or were you silenced?
Or were you silenced? Now,
and she said actually,
and she said the latter. Yeah, exactly. I think in last week's podcast, we'd had that silent or silenced, and we didn't have the answer. We now have the answer. Meghan said that she was silenced, which is all a very, it's obviously a big claim. And I think she, you know, it expresses why she was so deeply unhappy. And actually, I suppose her friend Janina Gavankar, who was on television this week, kind of hinted at that as well, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. And Meghan said herself that everyone in her world was given this sort of clear directive to say no comment. And
and that the palace would protect her.
You can understand the no comment, because the running commentary is what flares things up, what keeps things in the media, what keeps, you know, stories running. You can understand why no comment is often issued by friends and family. And also that protects the friends and family, because if they know that a friend or a family member is happy to give comment, they keep going back to them. You only have to look at Thomas Markle. He keeps talking, so people keep asking.
So anyway, Janina Gavankar, so this is Meghan's friend. She spoke at 2:00 in the morning LA time. She spoke to ITV's This Morning programme with Philip Schofield and Holly Willoughby. And we'll run you three of her clips. One where she explains that she was speaking with Meghan's permission, so Meghan knew that she was going to be on the show. Secondly, I think Janina. Well, when you have a listen, these are the three clips from Janina Gavankar.
Have you spoken to her about coming on this show today?
Oh yes, absolutely. I talk to them all of the time. We watch the special together, actually.
Yeah. So she is happy for you to be talking today.
We're all happy that we are in a new era. Okay. You know, we get to tell the truth.
Let's take the issue of mental health first of all, and the fact that she said she had absolutely no one to talk to. Now you say even if you can't be together, you're Facebooking all the time, you're chatting all the time, and so how come she had no one to go to when she's got you, she's got her friends? We know her father said yesterday that the family were ghosted, so she didn't have that avenue for whatever reason. So why? At what point did you know she was so seriously mentally unstable as to consider suicide, and that she couldn't get help?
I believe she said that she had no one to turn to within the institution.
So did she turn to you at any point during that time?
She turns to all of us. She turned to her husband.
And so what did you advise her to do? Because if it was one of my best friends who was going through something like that, I mean, that's huge, and you would be naturally hugely worried, and you'd want to be able to help them in some way.
Worried, terrified, sad. And, you know, after reading this short statement that came out from Buckingham Palace today, I thought two things. At one side, I thought, I'm so thankful that they are finally acknowledging the experience. But on the other side, I know that the family and the staff were well aware of the extent of it. And though their recollections may vary, ours don't, because we lived through it with them. And there are many emails and texts to support that.
Everybody wants to see, you know, happiness. We have campaigns here, you know, Be Kind campaigns. Of course, we want everybody to be happy, if that is even remotely possible. But then there are all these dark, occasionally a dark shadow comes up. You think, oh God, here we go again. Here's something else that has to be addressed. And now we've got the bullying investigation going on. What do you say to the accusations about her bullying people?
Well, I have known her for 17 years, and I have seen the way that she regards the people around her and the people she works with, and I can say she's not a bully. But I can also say that I am personally glad that people are doing their due diligence, because I also know why someone had to leave, and it was for gross misconduct. And the truth will come out. There's plenty of emails and texts about that.
So there we are. You've heard Janina say she watched it with Meghan. So she sat down. She didn't say she was in the room, but she could have been. She was sat with Meghan in Montecito watching it. That there was a paper trail, effectively, saying that the royal family were contacted by Meghan by email and text asking for help. And that on this whole bullying allegation that that preceded the interview, you'll be aware of the Times article we spoke about in depth last week. Of the bullying claims, she says that one of the employees left for gross misconduct. Her claim, we don't know. The palace haven't spoken about it, just that the palace has launched an investigation into the bullying claims.
Yeah, and she said, someone gave me a fact just before I came in here, that 13 times during the interview, the couple blame the institution. And one of these times is during this segment where she says that they were willing to lie to protect other members of the family, but they weren't willing to tell the truth to protect me and my husband.
Well, you say it so eloquently, but let's hear Meghan say it.
They were willing to lie to protect other members of the family, but they weren't willing to tell the truth to protect me and my husband.
So you had Javina Gabanka talking about the institution, Meghan talking about the institution. It kind of, this is the enemy for them, isn't it? I mean, there's a family dynamic here as well. And I always say the royal family is two things. It is the institution of monarchy. It is also a bunch of people who are related, which is the conflict often. But Javina Gabanka was clearly sent out with Meghan's approval to say this stuff. And she said a few times during the course of that interview on This Morning that the truth now can come out. I'm so pleased we're in a new era, as she said. Excuse me.
Yeah, and I guess that's what Harry and Meghan used this 2-hour interview for, is to give their account of how they felt and how things have played out over the last few years. Having said that, when you watch the interview back, they do blame pretty much everybody else throughout the course of the interview. I think, you know, there's little where it's sort of... Yeah,
I suppose you wouldn't expect Harry and Meghan to say, actually, we did this wrong, we did that wrong, because, funny, you're right, actually, to point that out, because I don't remember hearing that at all. I could have done this better, I could have been a bit more, I don't know, X, Y, or Z, who knows?
Meghan says in the interview how she had no idea what she was getting herself into. And I've no doubt, until you're in it, how could you possibly know really what it's like?
Yes.
Having said that, you know, in the engagement interview that they gave, you know, Harry said, I've tried to warn her, I've told her about it, I've tried to explain. So
what this is like, yeah. Well, he also spoke about being trapped, didn't he? Like my family are trapped in this institution, and I can't get out. We'll play that in a bit. But yeah. I said we would do everything chronologically. I think just because, as we've said, this is Meghan's side of the story. It was a 2-hour interview with another hour 25 left on tape they didn't use. Why don't you just read, if you've got it there, Lizzie, the Queen's response to this, because it took them a couple of days to come out with a response. But I just think as we're midway through discussing Harry and Meghan, let's just be sort of clear about what the royal family's response to all this is. Lizzie's going to read it in her best Queen's accent, and we'll also show you the words on screen as she reads them. So you can pretend that Lizzie's being the Queen. My family and I.
To be clear, this statement was issued by Buckingham Palace, but it was issued
On behalf of the Queen.
on behalf of
Right.
the Queen.
Okay, so go pictures, go voice.
And she said, the whole family is saddened to learn the full extent of how challenging the last few years have been for Harry and Meghan. The issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning. While some recollections may vary, they are taken very seriously and will be addressed by the family privately. Harry, Meghan, and Archie will always be much loved family members.
So, well done with that statement, Lizzie. I thought you did very well. 10 out of 10 for your Queen's accent.
I wasn't trying to be the Queen.
What do you have a few weeks ago when we were trying to practice how they say yes in The Crown? You have to say ears.
Ears.
Yeah. Anyway, we digress into much more pathetic things. There are very many important things to talk about here. So let's talk about the royal family statement, and we'll then go back to a bit more Harry and Meghan. It took them a couple of days to come out with this statement. So this thing, for your information, if you're watching this in another part of the world, this thing went out between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. in the UK on Monday morning, so Sunday night in America, when it went out on CBS. I mean, we haven't actually mentioned that when it aired here on ITV, or did we say this earlier, it had an average of 11 million viewers. It peaked at 12 million. 54% of all people watching all television were watching this program on Monday night on ITV between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. And I think in many ways, the reason partly for the palace's delay in getting this thing as any sort of response out there is because they kind of wanted the UK public to see the whole thing rather than all the news and the chatter and all the rest of it on the Monday. They wanted actually, okay, if you're going to watch this, and 12 million people did, let's just pause, let's see what the UK reaction is. And therefore, it wasn't really until, what time was it? About 20 past 5 on Tuesday that we finally got a response from the palace.
Yeah, as we've said, the time for them to take to release this statement. But I think that they wanted to take their time, carefully consider what they were going to say, not rush anything out, give it a measured response. And when it came, it was short. It made clear that, you know, there's a family at the heart of this, and they want to address these issues privately, not in front of everybody. They want to take them away, and they want to address them properly. And actually, the statement, I mean, there'd been sort of so much reaction and noise around the interview on Monday and Tuesday, and this statement just brought everything back down. It was very calm, considered, and it echoed the statements we've had before, that we had when they stepped away as working members, where it said that they will remain much loved members of the family. And it also said, I thought the key word was that the issues raised, particularly that of race, are concerning. Issues is plural. They're not saying the only thing we're looking at here is race. We're looking at all the issues.
Also, isn't recollections in plural as well with an S?
Yeah, that was also interesting. Yeah. Whilst some recollections may vary, i.e., you know, they don't necessarily, you know, remember things happening as Harry and Meghan are saying they did.
Exactly, which it comes back to the point that this was Meghan and Harry's side of the story. It doesn't necessarily mean it's actual fact, or that it happened in exactly the way that Harry and Meghan remember. Particularly if Meghan wasn't even there in the room when it was said. So I think the palace was probably quite clever in many ways to say some recollections may vary, but what they didn't want to do was pour a whole, you know, bag of logs on the fire and make the whole thing even worse. Like if this was politics, you get the leader of the opposing political party to come out and say a statement and all the rest of it. Well, the palace operates differently to politics, and they wanted to calm the whole thing down rather than make it even more inflammatory.
Yeah, and I think that they managed that successfully. What they don't want is this to become a public tit for tat. You know, they say this in an interview and we say this and then they say this. They're going to go away and they're going to look at this privately. And it has felt this week like there's been no sort of briefings to papers and, you know, this said, that said. It has really been taken offline and you know, the drawbridge is up and they've gone away to look at this.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you say they're not going to go, she said this, we say that, there was a bit of that in the interview itself when it was like, did Kate make Meghan cry or did Meghan make Kate cry? Question mark. So whilst the stories at the time were all about, this is so pre-wedding, this will be some sort of flower girl, they call it, bridesmaids, dress fittings, that Meghan said something that made Kate cry. And I think, was she just pregnant or just had a baby, or
just had Prince Louis?
Just had Louis. And yet that Meghan categorically says the reverse happened. So have a listen to what Meghan said.
Did you make Kate cry?
No.
Was there a situation where she might have cried or she could have cried?
No, the reverse happened. And I don't say that to be disparaging to anyone, because it was a really hard week of the wedding and she was upset about something, but she owned it and she apologized.
So we care about this. Why, Lizzie? Because, I mean, lots of families will have dress fittings at weddings and someone will say something and somebody will get upset, and, you know, that's quite normal, isn't it? That's what happens at every wedding.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not here the issue for Meghan of who made who cry, although I'm sure at the time that was very upsetting to whatever happened and whoever's, you know, whatever went on behind closed doors. To Meghan, the problem was that 6 or 7 months after the wedding, she says the reverse of what was out in the press actually happened, and she felt aggrieved that nobody corrected that narrative, that narrative was allowed to stay out there. And I think that's the issue for Meghan.
I was actually just thinking that we were talking earlier about Prince William speaking today at that event in East London. He was with Kate, and maybe the third question from the poor reporter should be, Kate, did you make Meghan cry? And then she could say, well, can I categorically say that no, it was she that made me cry? And then we'd have a whole news story on our hands. I'm making light of it because actually, compared to everything else, like skin color and mental health seems pretty light. Nevertheless, it's part of what Meghan said, and also what her friend Jovina Gabanka said, that, why is everybody always silent? Why don't they go out and correct stuff? Why don't they actually speak? And I wonder whether one of the effects of this interview will be that the royal family will change a little more. We always say, don't we, that whilst it gives the impression of stability, we don't have the royal family today that we had in 1952 when the Queen took over, as it were. And it's not the same royal family as it was in 1936 when her father became king. So it does move with the times. And maybe this is one of those moments when they might say at the palace, you know what, maybe we do need to sort of, if something's out there and it's wrong, we need to actually be a bit more forceful about things and say, no, that's wrong. You got it completely the wrong way round.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning, though, that again, Meghan, this is Meghan's side of the story, and it's one side. We don't know what Kate thinks or how Kate
that's
feels.
What I mean. We could have answered that question today. We didn't, or the reporter there didn't. But kind of, why not? Why not give Kate her say then? Kate, what do you think? What happened actually, Kate?
I suppose then you've got everything then playing out in public. Is that really how?
It's not what they want. Yeah.
No.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
But I think it is worth remembering all along that what we are looking at here is one side of the story.
Right, so let's talk. We're talking about relationships. Let's go on to relationships, because Harry and Meghan spoke about the Queen. Harry spoke about Prince Charles, and he also spoke about William. Let's take the Queen first, because we should do this in order of seniority. But let's do it the right way. Now, I thought they went out of their way to say that the Queen was really good to them, that they don't have an issue with her, they have a lot of respect for her. But equally, they were criticising the institution of which the Queen is head and has been running for the last, 69 years, 70 years next year, isn't it? So how is that not a criticism of the Queen?
Yeah, I think it was not a direct criticism, but it was an indirect one by criticising the institution and which she is head of and the family.
Yeah, your institution and all the people that work in it are basically messing this up. That would be a sort of general summary of what Meghan and Harry said.
Yeah, but there was a they were deliberately very warm towards the Queen throughout. Meghan told that story about when they went to Chester together for that first joint engagement, how the Queen...
That's the royal train engagement, to Chester, if anyone remembers that. If we might even have the pictures to show you right now, where they went on the royal train to Chester together. But yes, as you say, Lizzie, I interrupted, sorry, that they had a blanket share.
Yeah, the Queen went to share her blanket, and she gave Meghan a gift. Meghan said that the Queen had been wonderful to her and warm. You know, Harry talked about how he hadn't blindsided his grandmother with their news that they were going to move away, that he had a huge respect for his grandmother and he would never do that. There was
let's hear that bit, actually, because I think it's worth hearing Harry here talk about that issue of when they announced that they were going to leave the royal family. So let's take you back to January of last year. The narrative was allowed to run, shall we say, by the palace, that the Queen was taken by surprise by Harry and Meghan's announcement. Harry, however, says he'd spoken to the Queen about it and he'd spoken to his father about it. Have a listen.
You talked to her several times about this over
2 years.
2 years, but even the night before, days before, with the statement coming out, I remember that conversation.
So, and how do you know she wasn't blindsided? Because the way it was presented through the press is that suddenly you made this announcement, she didn't know it was coming.
No, I when we were in Canada, I had 3 conversations with my grandmother and 2 conversations with my father before he stopped taking my calls, and then said, can you put this all in writing, what your plan is?
Your father asked you to put it in writing?
Yeah, he asked me to put it in writing. I put all the specifics in there, even the fact that we were planning on putting the announcement out on the 7th of January.
So you just said that your dad stopped taking your calls. Why did he stop taking your calls?
Because I took matters by that point, I took matters into my own hands. It was like, I need to do this for my family. This is not a surprise to anybody. It's really sad that it's got to this point, but I've got to do something for my own mental health, for my wife's, and for Archie's as well, because I could see where this was headed.
So he spoke to the Queen, he spoke to his father about it. His father stopped taking his calls. He had to put it in writing. In what way are we to believe that the royal family were blindsided by this announcement in January 2020?
I think from the time, the family, from what we were told, there was an awareness that Harry and Meghan were unhappy and were looking at alternative ways of perhaps their role looking. I think where the blindsided story came from was the fact that it was rushed out so quickly in response to a newspaper article saying that they were leaving. I think that's where the blindsided story came from, that they sort of very quickly rush out that actually we're going.
But actually, you know, if what Harry's saying is true, and again we haven't heard the Queen's view, and so maybe we should shout at the Queen next time she's on a visit. Hello, Mom. How many times did Harry call you before they decided to leave? That wouldn't go well, so maybe I won't.
I don't think that would go well.
So yes, I mean, again, there are 2 sides to the story, but Harry and Meghan's side is that they called and they emailed, or they put it all in writing, and they said that they wanted out. And actually, I remember talking to Tom Bradby about this when I made a documentary on when they left, and he said he kind of knew in Africa in October 2019 that Harry and Meghan wanted a way out, that this was their sort of exit strategy. So if they'd had those conversations with the family, then they can't claim that it was a surprise. Just on Tom Bradby, we've enjoyed meeting him and saying how he got a mention, didn't he, in the Oprah interview?
The reporter,
yeah. Not sort of, Tom Bradby, the guy that Harry's known for many years, or not sort of that TV anchor in the UK, but the reporter. So I've enjoyed talking to Tom about that. So that's the issue with, as I said, we talked about the Queen and whether or not he was actually indirectly criticising her because of the way they criticised the institution. He didn't really hold back with his father, though, did he? He stopped taking my calls. He stopped my money. He stopped my security. I don't think Harry held back on the dad.
No, this was really sad when, you know, from Harry's point of view, his father, he says, stop taking his calls and stop supporting them. I mean, Prince Charles was the man that walked his wife down the aisle on their wedding day because her own father couldn't be there. He was there supporting them when they were making that initial move.
And paying for it initially as well.
Paying for it and until they were able to stand on their own 2 feet. And Harry and Meghan have, as we've said a lot on this podcast, they have signed some pretty big deals over the last year and have quite a substantial amount of money themselves.
Yes, they don't really need to worry about the security bill at the moment, do they? But Harry looked quite wounded. He was asked. He was actually asked by Oprah if Prince Charles has started taking his calls again. I thought that was the most emotional that Harry got.
Is he taking your calls now?
Yeah, he is. There's a lot to work through there. I feel really let down because he's been through something similar. He knows what pain feels like. And Archie's his grandson. But at the same time, of course I will always love him. But there's a lot of hurt that's happened, and I will continue to make it one of my priorities to try and heal that relationship.
Yeah, I think that was about as emotional as Harry looked throughout the whole interview. And it kind of reminded me that what you were watching here play out, at the heart of it was a family and family relationships. And,
which do break down. I mean, Meghan's family relationship broke down with her father. There are plenty of other families watching this, I'm sure, who have got issues with their brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, sons, daughters. It does happen.
It does happen. But to see it have to play out publicly is incredibly sad. And, I think that going back to the Queen's statement that they want to deal with this privately is probably a good thing, to take this stuff away and to go and look at it as a family.
So from father to brother, let's have a listen to what he said about Prince William.
You said that your brother was trapped. You said that you love your brother and always will love your brother. You didn't tell me what the relationship is now, though.
The relationship is space at the moment. And, time heals all things, hopefully.
Now, I thought, given that everything we know about the fracturing of their relationship, and they haven't spoken for the best part of a year, as we record this podcast, by the way, I thought that Harry kind of didn't want to go into any more detail. I mean, this relationship is one of space, he said, made the hand movement as well. But other than that, he didn't go much further from where Tom Bradley asked him in October 2019 that they're on different paths and they don't really see eye to eye.
And your brother relationship? Much has been said about that.
Yeah, and much will continue to be said about that. As I've said before, I love William to bits. He's my brother. We've been through hell together, and we have a shared experience. But we were on different paths.
Yeah, he seemed reluctant, didn't he, to talk any more about his brother. He said that one line and then he wasn't going to go into any more details. And William, out on an engagement at a school in East London today, was actually asked by a reporter there about had he spoken to his brother since the Oprah interview, and he said,
No, I haven't spoken yet, but I will do.
So, I mean, they haven't spoken. I've kind of heard that there's been some sort of movement in that. Now, I don't know quite what movement means. I can only guess that it's probably some kind of messaging. Perhaps I know how these royals work sometimes. Perhaps the two officers have been in touch to say, do you want to schedule in a phone call? Perhaps they've even done the very modern thing of WhatsApping each other or something like that. But we know they haven't spoken because William said as much. But it rather suggests that they know that this interview was so big that one of the positive things that might come out of it is that they will start talking again. They might even in time repair that relationship.
Yeah, and I think they should be given the space and the time, to hopefully for that to happen, for them to be able to reconcile. And wouldn't it be lovely if in July, for what would have been Diana's 60th birthday, if they could both be there together for the unveiling of that statue and healed some of those wounds.
Yeah, I still think that is the plan at the moment. I mean, July's a long way off, but that's definitely what the plan is. Look, there's so much more we could talk about with this interview. We could talk about how Harry and Meghan spoke at the end, and they've been supporting one another. Like, you saved me, no, you saved me. There was the Harry talking about his family being trapped. His brother, his father were trapped in this institution. There's the whole relationship with the press. I mean, I must say, I've missed out on these, whatever they were. What did he call them? Holiday parties that us members of the press are meant to go on?
Yeah, so apparently
I've never had one.
I've never had one, and I've asked other people, and they've never had one either. So we're all a bit sad to be missing out on whatever these holiday parties are.
Exactly. I mean, I have, sometimes we get really, really fancy receptions where we get to meet these principals. I remember a distinct one on the apron of an airport at the bottom of a plane, just underneath the wing with the engine whirring in the background. That was pretty fancy, where we spoke to Prince Charles. William's come to the back of the plane a few times to say, just after we nearly crashed in Pakistan. But holiday parties, I can't think of any holiday parties.
No holiday parties. Maybe we're not important enough to get invited. We'll have to work on it.
Yeah, we got invited to Dumfries House once, where Prince Charles was showing us the work that he was doing, and there was a reception there. Okay, was that a holiday party? Definitely not. It was a working visit where we sort of went and filmed around the estate, did lots of interviews. I'm waiting for my holiday party invitation. And if Prince Harry, if you're issuing them, Prince Harry, then I'm more than happy to come over to Montecito. And,
we're there. We'll be in Montecito next week.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. Yeah. I only travel first class, but if you're paying, I'll definitely come. Anyway, so we spoke about the serious part of that Harry was raising about the issue with the press was that his family are scared of the tabloid press, and the reason they don't take them on, and we know that Harry and Meghan aren't scared because they took on the Mail on Sunday and won. The reason why they're not, the reason they are scared, he says, is because they're worried about the coverage that they're going to get from the press, and that the monarchy only exists at the behest of the people, and if the press turn against the monarchy, then it's kind of game over, and that's what he was suggesting, wasn't it?
There was an opportunity, many opportunities, for my family to show some public support. And I guess one of the most telling parts, and the saddest parts, I guess, was over 70 members of parliament, female members of parliament, both Conservative and Labour, came out and called out the colonial undertones of articles and headlines written about Meghan. Yet no one from my family ever said anything over those 3 years. That hurts. But I also am acutely aware of where my family stand and how scared they are of the tabloids turning on them.
Turning on them for what? They're the royal family.
Yes, but it's there is this invisible, what's termed or referred to as the invisible contract behind closed doors between the institution and the tabloids, UK tabloids.
So one of the fallouts of this interview, and many people will think this is a good thing, other people will not, it is the departure from ITV's Good Morning Britain, that's our breakfast show on ITV here, of Piers Morgan. Now, I had a kind of ringside seat of this because I was, after staying up all night, as Lizzie has previously mentioned, typing away, I was on Good Morning Britain on Monday. And Piers Morgan was saying some quite inflammatory things about Meghan, that he didn't believe her story. We're not going to play them here because the fact he's left ITV because people generally disapproved of the message that he was putting out there and the impact it might have on people's mental health and those who are seeking help for suicide. I think it would be wrong to play them again. But, I remember disagreeing with him on that program, saying to him that I thought, who are we to say that Meghan's not telling the truth when she was the one suffering from this very severe mental health issue at the time. But he's gone. The bombastic Piers Morgan on Good Morning Britain, after how many years is it? Did he say 6 years, 6 or 7 years? He's done. He's finished. He's gone. He's left.
Yeah, and Meghan herself actually filed a complaint following that programme to the CEO of ITV, saying that essentially if he's going to speak like that about mental health, it will affect other people. Yeah. And I think him dismissing issues like that is, Meghan is saying that is how she felt, and I don't think it's for anybody else to question what she's saying. And actually, for her to be able to get up and say to other people, that's how I was feeling, is an incredibly brave thing to do, and it will potentially help other people. So for him to dismiss it so easily, that has, you know, been widely criticised.
Yeah, and I think ITV generally concluded that it was against what the company is doing in every other area of the organisation, but also as a broadcaster, as a public service broadcaster, to get the message of mental health support out there. So Piers Morgan's controversial time at the helm of Good Morning Britain has come to an end as a result of this interview. I don't think Meghan and Harry will be crying into their cornflakes, not that they watch Good Morning Britain over in California. And there'll be plenty of other people who didn't like him either, plenty of people who thought, actually, no, he spoke a view, he expressed a view that a lot of people might share or recognise on other matters. He was certainly very forceful with politicians who went on the show. And actually on the day that he left, which was on the Tuesday, so the day after we were dissecting the interview on the show, it had its highest ratings and beats its rival, BBC Breakfast, for the first time. So he kind of feels like he's vindicated because he did what he intended to do, which was raise its profile and its reputation and its viewing figures. But now he's gone as a result of what he said about Meghan Markle's interview. I suppose, we've spoken about Piers. Let's just give you his explanation yesterday, or the day before, no, yesterday, or sometime this week after he left, for why he said what he said. So we're not repeating the allegation here that he doesn't believe Meghan, but this is his view about Harry and Meghan more generally.
I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in the right to be allowed to have an opinion. If people want to believe Meghan Markle, that's entirely their right. I don't believe almost anything that comes out of her mouth, and I think the damage she's done to the British monarchy and to the Queen at a time when Prince Philip was lying in hospital is enormous and frankly contemptible. So if I have to fall on my sword for expressing an honestly held opinion about Meghan Markle and that diatribe of bilge that she came out with in that interview, so be it.
We could probably extend this podcast by another 2 hours, but we're at risk of becoming as long as the interview itself. So it's on the ITV hub. If you're watching in the UK or listening in the UK, it's still available to watch. I imagine more people than the 12 million that watched it are doing. And just for context, if you're listening or watching to this in America, Britain's a country with 65 million people. 12 million people watched it. As we said earlier, half of all those watching TV on Monday night. I think the American figures for CBS were something like 17 million. I mean, a huge amount of interest. But I think you've got to say the view of the UK and the view of the royal family from abroad has been quite negatively impacted by this interview. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. And it will be interesting to see what Harry and Meghan do next. You know, they've had their say now, and they've got it all out there and hopefully got it all off their chest and can now go away and hopefully repair some relationships. It will be interesting to see what they do.
I can't believe we got this far. I just reminded they can go away and they can tend to the chickens. I can't believe we've got this far through the podcast. We haven't mentioned the chickens.
The chicken coop.
The chicken coop. Actually, should we have a listen to Meghan explaining where the chickens came from?
Hi, girls.
We put on our wellies to feed the hens Meghan and Harry recently rescued from a factory farm.
I love your little designer house here. Archie's chicken. Oh, how cute.
Yeah. So I rudely interrupt you on your wider point because I suddenly thought, I can't believe we're about to end this podcast. We haven't mentioned that they have chickens that they rescued from a battery farm. So those chickens are obviously very happy chickens now. I don't know whether they're just egg-laying chickens or whether they're chickens for the roasting pot in the future, but we didn't get to find out that information.
We didn't. It was quite sweet actually. On the chicken coop it said Archie's chick in.
Chick in, yes. And also in that chicken coop was where they revealed that they got married 3 days before, but we think we've worked out that didn't happen because you can't get married if it's not licensed, and there aren't two witnesses, even though the Archbishop of Canterbury, the head boy, as it were, of the church was there.
Yeah, I guess it was probably rather than an official marriage, it was maybe sort of a blessing.
Yeah. Okay. So listen, apologies. There's probably bits of the interview that you wanted us to discuss that we didn't. I think we would have been at risk of being here for a very long time indeed. But hopefully that was a useful, fairly interesting, remotely appropriate summary of what happened and our take on it. If it isn't, well, you have to go and find someone else. That was the best that we could do.
There'll be another full take of it on Sunday night, won't there, Chris?
Yeah, actually, if you're in the UK on Sunday night on ITV at 10:15, I believe, and I haven't started working on it yet, so you'll probably see a very tired-looking reporter on it. We are doing a documentary on the fallout of what happened this week with the royal family. 10:15, ITV, Sunday night. I may or may not be there, depending on whether I've fallen asleep.